It begins with a sound you never forget, boots on earth, and a hard knock on a cabin door. It is May 1838. U.S. Army troops and state militia move into Cherokee homelands, Tennessee, Alabama, North Carolina, Georgia, driving families from houses they've lived in for generations. More than 16,000 Cherokee are forced out. Source: they are marched into Roundup camps, stockades, crowded, hot, filthy, and afraid. Families separated, the elderly and sick pushed at gunpoint, people given only moments to grab what they can carry. Source: and then the road begins. An 800-mile forced removal through summer heat, autumn mud, and winter ice, where sickness and hunger do what bullets don't have to. A survivor will remember it like this: many days pass, and people die very much. Source: this isn't ancient history. It is American history. Law, policy, and power used to empty a homeland. And for the Cherokee, it becomes a name that still stings: the Trail of Tears. To understand the Trail of Tears, you have to understand what the Cherokee were and are. Not a tribe as a stereotype, a nation with towns, farms, diplomacy, schools, and law. By the 1820s, the Cherokee experienced a revolution in literacy through Sequoia syllabary and established a formal governing system with a written constitution. Source: but the Cherokee also lived under pressure that tightened like a rope: land hunger from settlers, state laws closing in, and a federal government increasingly committed to removal. And in 1830, Congress passed the Indian Removal Act, empowering the president to negotiate removal treaties for indigenous nations east of the Mississippi. This is the David versus Goliath spine of the story. A Cherokee nation fighting, through law, petitions, diplomacy, community discipline, against the expanding weight of the United States and state governments. And the United States was not asking politely. How removal became legal. If you're looking for the moment the trap snapped shut, it's this: a treaty the Cherokee majority rejected, used anyway. In December 1835, a small minority signed the Treaty of New Echota, ceding Cherokee lands east of the Mississippi to the United States in exchange for money and land in Indian Territory. Source: the NPS explains that only a small fraction of Cherokee were present, and the great majority opposed removal. More than 15,000 protested. But the U.S. Senate ratified the treaty in May 1836 by just one vote. One vote can sound small until it becomes the legal excuse to take an entire homeland. And once that treaty was ratified, the logic of removal shifted from pressure to deadline. The Cherokee Nation was split, and the clock began to run out.
Pronunciation guides. Echota, Echota. Seed, seed. Section title: Jackson's Argument versus Cherokee Reality. In December 1830, President Andrew Jackson described removal as a benevolent policy, telling Congress it was approaching a happy consummation. Source: that is the language of power. Call forced removal benevolence. Call invasion order. Call dispossession progress. The NPS details how state pressure intensified, Cherokee people restricted from conducting tribal business, testifying in court against whites, and more, while land was targeted and redistributed. Source: the Cherokee fought through American systems, petitioning, challenging, pleading. But when a government has decided what it wants, procedure can become a hallway leading only one direction. Section title: Stockades and Stolen Time. Now we return to May 1838, the beginning of the removal operation. U.S. Army troops and state militia forcibly evict Cherokee people from their homes and push them into Roundup camps, then emigration camps. Source: The NPS describes the Roundup as harrowing. Families separated, the elderly and ill forced out at gunpoint, people given only moments to collect cherished possessions, then white looters ransacking homes behind them. Source: Here is the personal tragedy element because it is not abstract. It is a grandmother pulled from a chair, a baby with a fever in a crowded pen, a family looking back once, knowing the door they're leaving may never open for them again.
And in those camps, disease spreads faster than news. When people are crowded, hungry, frightened, death becomes ordinary. And ordinary death is one of the cruelest kinds. The failed summer removal. In June 1838, 3 detachments were sent west by water. But the journey was punishing. River levels could be too low, routes could collapse into delay and disease. One group traveling overland in Arkansas suffered 3 to 5 deaths each day due to illness and drought, according to the NPS narrative. 15,000 captives still awaited removal. Overcrowding, poor sanitation, drought, misery stacked on misery. So the Cherokee asked for delay until fall and to manage removal themselves. The delay was granted, but only if they remained imprisoned in camps until travel resumed. Even mercy came with a chain attached. A hard bargain for survival. Then comes a critical pivot. The NPS records negotiations between Principal Chief John Ross and General Winfield Scott, and later, Scott orders that Ross will be in charge of future detachment movements. Ross orchestrates 14 detachments, most traveling over existing roads, between August and December 1838. This is the underdog story, not victory, but survival strategy. A leader forced to manage catastrophe, organizing food, wagons, routes, discipline, and hope, while knowing the government that caused the crisis still holds the power to punish, delay, or abandon. It's a terrible leadership dilemma. Do you refuse and risk greater violence? Or do you lead so fewer die?
Pronunciation Guides. John Ross. Winfield Scott. Section title: Trapped Between Rivers. By November, the NPS describes 12 groups of about 1,000 each, trudging 800 miles overland. Source: Then the weather turns the road into a weapon. Heavy rains, mud, wagons bogging down, little grazing, meager rations. Pause. And in January, 2/3 of the ill-equipped Cherokee are trapped between the icebound Ohio and Mississippi rivers. Source: This is the emotional apex because it's where policy becomes visible as suffering. Pause. A survivor remembers losing family one after another, one each day, then all are gone. Source: And another voice carries the grief in plain words. Women's cry and make sad wails. Children cry, and many men cry, but they say nothing and keep on go towards west. Source:
So the story ends with a country split in two. A Cherokee nation rebuilding in Indian territory, and an Eastern Cherokee community holding on in the mountains. Both enduring, both surviving, both carrying the same scar. Section title: Memory, Law, and American Responsibility. The Trail of Tears forces a hard question onto the American story. What does the nation do when it wants land more than it wants justice? The documents are clear about intent. Federal policy was designed to move indigenous nations west. Jackson described it as benevolent. Source: the treaty language speaks in legal terms about cession and removal logistics. Source: and the NPS history tells you what those words meant on the ground: camps, hunger, disease, winter crossings, and death. Source: for a USA audience, this isn't about hating the country. It's about insisting the country be honest. Patriotism that can't face the past is not pride, it's denial. CTA. If you learn something here, share it, because forgetting is how injustice repeats itself. Subscribe for more documentaries on Native American history and U.S. policy, grounded in primary sources and told with respect. And check the description for the key documents: the NPS Trail of Tears history, Jackson's message, and the Treaty of New Echota. The Trail of Tears was not a metaphor, it was a forced march, and its legacy is still written on the map of the United States.